The elevator climbed silently through the glass tower, carrying me toward what I thought would be the opportunity of a lifetime. My reflection stared back at me from the polished steel doors. Crisp white shirt, navy blazer, confident smile that barely masked the nervous energy coursing through my veins. Sarah Chen, investigative journalist, about to land the biggest interview of her career. Penthouse level, the elevator announced in its mechanical voice. The doors slid open to reveal a reception area that screamed wealth and power. Marble floors stretched toward floor-to-ceiling windows that offered a breathtaking view of the city below. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the pristine white furniture, creating an almost ethereal atmosphere. Ms. Chen, a woman, emerged from behind a sleek desk, her movements precise and calculated. She was tall, elegant, with silver hair pulled back in a perfect chignon. "I'm Victoria Sterling, Mr. Blackwood's executive assistant. He's waiting for you in the conference room." I followed her down a corridor lined with abstract paintings that probably cost more than my annual salary. Everything about this place felt deliberately intimidating, designed to make visitors feel small and insignificant. "Here we are," Victoria said, opening a heavy wooden door. "Mr. Blackwood will be with you shortly. Can I get you anything? Water? Coffee?" "Water would be great, thank you." The conference room was as imposing as the rest of the penthouse. A massive oval table dominated the space, surrounded by leather chairs that looked like they belonged in a boardroom where billion-dollar deals were made. More floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the city, now beginning to twinkle with the first lights of evening. I set up my recording equipment and reviewed my notes one final time. Marcus Blackwood, tech billionaire and CEO of Nexus Industries, had finally agreed to an exclusive interview after months of persistent requests. The timing was perfect, just as whispers of corporate malfeasance and questionable business practices had begun to surface in financial circles. The door opened with a soft click. "Miss Chen, I presume." Marcus Blackwood entered with the confident stride of a man accustomed to commanding any room he walked into. He was younger than I'd expected, maybe mid-40s, with sharp features and steel-gray eyes that seemed to catalog every detail of my appearance in seconds. "Mr. Blackwood, thank you for agreeing to this interview." I stood and extended my hand. His handshake was firm, lasting just long enough to establish dominance without being overtly aggressive. "Please call me Marcus, and thank you for making the trip. I understand you've been quite persistent in your requests." There was something in his tone, amusement mixed with something else I couldn't quite identify. Warning, perhaps. We settled into our chairs, and I activated my recording device. "I hope you don't mind if I record our conversation." "Not at all. Transparency is important to me." He leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled. "Though I should mention, we'll have complete privacy for our discussion. I've had the building sealed for security purposes. My staff has gone home for the evening." A small chill ran down my spine. Sealed. Standard protocol for sensitive discussions. The elevators are temporarily disabled, and security has been notified not to allow anyone up without my express permission. We wouldn't want any interruptions, would we? I forced a smile. Of course not. For the next hour we discussed his business empire, his vision for the future of technology, and his philanthropic endeavors. He was articulate, charming even, but I sensed he was carefully steering the conversation away from the more controversial topics I'd come to explore. "Now, Mr. Blackwood, Marcus, I'd like to discuss some recent allegations regarding Nexus Industries' involvement in certain questionable projects." His expression didn't change, but something shifted in the room's atmosphere. The friendly businessman facade seemed to slip just slightly. "What kind of allegations, Ms. Chen?" "There are reports that Nexus has been developing surveillance technology for authoritarian regimes. Technology that's been used to suppress dissent and violate human rights." A smile played at the corners of his mouth. "Interesting. And where did you hear these reports?" "I have sources within the industry. People who are concerned about the ethical implications of people like Dr. Michael Santos." My blood froze. Dr. Santos was one of my key sources, a former Nexus employee who had contacted me with evidence of the company's illegal activities. I had promised him complete anonymity. "I'm not at liberty to discuss my sources." "Of course not. Professional ethics and all that." Marcus stood and walked to the windows, his hands clasped behind his back. "Tell me, Ms. Chen, When was the last time you spoke with Dr. Santos? The question sent ice through my veins. I'm not going to. 3 days ago, wasn't it? A phone call at 2:47 p.m., lasting exactly 18 minutes and 34 seconds. I stared at him, my mouth suddenly dry. How could you possibly know? Because Dr. Santos has been working for me all along. The words hit me like a physical blow. What? Marcus turned from the window, and when he faced me, the mask was completely off. The friendly businessman was gone, replaced by something cold and predatory. Did you really think you could investigate me without my knowledge? Every source you've cultivated, every lead you've followed, every piece of evidence you've uncovered, it's all been carefully orchestrated. Dr. Santos, your mysterious whistleblower from accounting, even that janitor who claimed to overhear sensitive conversations. All of them work for me. My hand moved instinctively toward my phone, but Marcus shook his head. Cell towers in this area are experiencing technical difficulties tonight. Such a shame about these infrastructure problems. I stood abruptly, my chair rolling backward. I'm leaving. Now. I'm afraid that's not possible. I strode toward the door and grabbed the handle. It didn't turn. I tried again, putting my full weight behind it, but it remained solidly locked. The building's security system is quite sophisticated, Marcus said conversationally. Biometric locks, reinforced doors, bulletproof glass. Once activated, the penthouse becomes essentially impenetrable. For security purposes, you understand. You can't keep me here. People know where I am. My editor knows you're interviewing a reclusive billionaire who values his privacy. When you don't return tonight, he'll assume the interview ran long, or perhaps that you decided to stay in the city overnight. It won't be unusual. Investigative journalists often disappear for days at a time while pursuing a story. I backed away from the door, my mind racing. This wasn't happening. This couldn't be happening. What do you want? Want? Ms. Chen, you've misunderstood the situation entirely. This isn't about what I want. This is about what needs to be done. The lights in the room suddenly dimmed, and I heard the soft hiss of the air conditioning system shutting down. Emergency lighting kicked in, bathing everything in a pale red glow that made Marcus's face look demonic. You see, your investigation, while ultimately fruitless, has drawn unwanted attention to certain aspects of my business. Attention that needs to be redirected. If you hurt me, it will only confirm everything. The story will come out anyway. Will it? Without evidence, without sources that can be verified, what do you really have? Conspiracy theories. Speculation. He moved closer, and I instinctively stepped back. Besides, who says anyone's going to be hurt? That's when I heard it. A soft ding from the elevator shaft. Marcus smiled. Ah, right on time. Chapter 2. The others. The elevator doors opened, and 3 people stepped into the reception area. Through the glass walls of the conference room, I could see them clearly, and my blood turned to ice. The first was a woman in her 30s with short-cropped blonde hair and predatory eyes. She moved with the fluid grace of someone trained in violence. The second was a massive man, easily 6'5", with arms covered in tattoos and scars that spoke of a violent past. The third was perhaps the most unsettling. A thin, pale man in an expensive suit whose mild appearance couldn't disguise the calculating intelligence behind his wire-rimmed glasses. Let me introduce my associates, Marcus said, his voice now carrying a tone of theatrical pleasure. The lovely lady is Rebecca, formerly of military intelligence. The gentleman with the impressive physique is Victor, who has extensive experience in problem resolution. And the distinguished gentleman in the suit is Dr. Harrison Price, a psychiatrist who specializes in very specific behavioral modifications. Victoria, the assistant who had greeted me earlier, appeared from somewhere in the shadows. In the red emergency lighting, her elegant appearance had transformed into something sinister. Victoria, would you please escort our guest to the main conference room? I believe it's time for the real meeting to begin. My legs felt like jelly, but I forced myself to move. Running would be pointless. Where could I go in a sealed building 60 floors above the street? The main conference room was even larger than the one where I'd been interviewed, with a table that could easily seat 20 people. The walls were lined with screens displaying what looked like surveillance footage from various locations around the building. I could see empty hallways, stairwells, and the elevator shaft I'd arrived in just hours earlier. The others were already seated when Victoria guided me in. Rebecca was cleaning her fingernails with what looked like a very sharp knife. Victor sat motionless, his massive hands folded on the table, while Dr. Price was reviewing notes in a leather portfolio. "Please sit," Marcus said, gesturing to a chair at the far end of the table. "We have much to discuss." I remained standing. "I demand to know what this is about." "Demands?" Rebecca looked up from her knife, amused. "I like her spirit." "Sit down, Miss Chen," Marcus repeated, his voice carrying an edge of steel. "This will all be much easier if you cooperate." When I still didn't move, Victor stood. The simple action was somehow more threatening than any verbal threat could have been. Much better. Marcus took his place at the head of the table. "Now then, let's begin. Victoria, would you please dim the lights further?" The room plunged into an even deeper red twilight. On the screens around us, I could see that night had fully fallen outside. The city lights sparkled far below like distant stars. "What you're about to learn," Marcus began, "is that your investigation, while misguided in its focus, has stumbled upon something far more significant than corporate malfeasance. You've uncovered the existence of a network, Ms. Chen. A very special network of individuals who handle society's most difficult problems." Dr. Price looked up from his notes. "The subject shows elevated stress indicators but maintains cognitive function." "Interesting." "I'm not a subject," I snapped. "Oh, but you are," he replied mildly. "You became a subject the moment you walked into this building." Marcus gestured to the others around the table. "Each of my associates has a particular specialty. Rebecca handles elimination of threats. Victor specializes in intimidation and physical persuasion. Dr. Price focuses on psychological conditioning. Together, we form what you might call a consulting firm for people who have problems that can't be solved through conventional means." "You're talking about murder." "Such a crude term. We prefer to think of it as permanent problem resolution." I looked around the table at their faces. Rebecca was smiling like a predator who'd cornered her prey. Victor remained expressionless, which was somehow worse. Dr. Price was taking notes, treating this like a fascinating case study. "The question before us tonight," Marcus continued, "is what to do with you. Your investigation has made you a liability, but simply eliminating you would raise questions. However, there are other options." Dr. Price cleared his throat. "With the proper conditioning, the subject could be quite useful. Investigative journalists have access to information networks that could benefit our organization. A few carefully applied techniques, some chemical assistance, and she could become an asset rather than a liability." "I'll never work for you," I said, my voice stronger than I felt. "Oh, my dear," Dr. Price smiled, and it was the most terrifying expression I'd ever seen. "You won't have a choice." Rebecca twirled her knife between her fingers. "Or we could just stage an accident. Investigative journalist working late. Tragic fall from a high window. These things happen." "Both options have merit," Marcus mused. "But I'm inclined toward Dr. Price's suggestion. Ms. Chen's reputation and connections could be quite valuable." I felt bile rise in my throat. These people were discussing my fate like they were choosing a restaurant for dinner. "There is, however, a third option," Marcus said, his eyes locked on mine. "You could join us willingly." The room fell silent except for the hum of electronics and the distant sound of wind against the windows. "What?" "You're an intelligent woman, Ms. Chen. Resourceful. Persistent. Those are qualities we value. Join our organization, and instead of being conditioned into compliance, you could become a full partner. Think of the stories you could uncover, the access you'd have to information that no other journalist could dream of." "You're insane." "Am I?" "Look around you. We operate in the highest levels of society, with unlimited resources and protection from the most powerful people in the world. We're not criminals, Ms. Chen. We're problem solvers. Society needs people like us." I stood again, this time more slowly. "Society needs people like you. You're murderers. You're talking about brainwashing me or throwing me out a window." "Extreme measures for extreme situations," Marcus replied calmly. "But that's precisely why we're giving you a choice. Work with us, and you'll have access to stories that will make your career. You'll be part of something larger than yourself. And if I refuse," he gestured to Dr. Price and Rebecca, "then we proceed with one of the other options." The silence stretched between us like a taut wire. I could feel their eyes on me, waiting for my answer. Outside, the city continued its nightly rhythm, completely unaware that 60 floors above, a woman was being offered a choice between damnation and death. "I need time to think," I said finally. Marcus checked his watch. "Of course. It's a significant decision. Shall we say 1 hour? That should give you sufficient time to weigh your options. And while I'm thinking, you'll remain here naturally. Victoria will escort you to one of our secure rooms where you can have privacy to consider our offer." Rebecca laughed, a sound like breaking glass. Privacy in a windowless room with reinforced doors and surveillance cameras. How thoughtful. Victoria stood and moved toward me. "This way, Ms. Chen." I followed her from the conference room, acutely aware that this might be my last chance to find a way out. The penthouse was larger than I'd initially realized, with corridors branching off in multiple directions. We passed several doors, all of which appeared to have electronic locks with biometric scanners. "Here we are," Victoria said, opening a door to reveal what looked like a small apartment. There was a bed, a desk, a private bathroom, and even a kitchenette. Under different circumstances, it might have been comfortable. "Mr. Blackwood wants you to be comfortable while you consider your decision." The door closed behind me with a decisive click, followed by the electronic whir of locks engaging. I was alone. The room had no windows, and the only light came from recessed fixtures in the ceiling. I searched every inch, looking for anything that might help me escape, but found nothing. The walls were solid, the door was reinforced steel, and even the bathroom fixtures were designed to prevent anyone from fashioning them into weapons. But I wasn't ready to give up. Not yet. I sat at the desk and tried to organize my thoughts. Marcus had made a fundamental error in bringing me here. He'd revealed too much, shown me too much. If I could find a way to escape, I'd have enough information to destroy him and his organization. The key was finding a weakness in their security system. I began to examine the room more carefully, this time looking not for escape routes but for information. The surveillance camera in the corner was obviously visible, but there might be others. The air vents were too small to crawl through, but they might carry sound from other parts of the building. That's when I heard it, a faint tapping sound coming through the ventilation system. I climbed onto the desk and put my ear close to the air vent. The tapping continued, rhythmic and deliberate. It was Morse code. 3 dots, 3 dashes, 3 dots. Someone else was trapped in this building. I grabbed a pen from the desk and tapped back on the metal vent cover, sending the same signal. The response was immediate, a rapid series of taps that spelled out, "Who?" I tapped back. "Sarah Chen, journalist." The response made my blood run cold. "David Reeves, FBI." An FBI agent was imprisoned somewhere in this building. The implications hit me like a sledgehammer. Marcus hadn't just trapped me, there were others. How many? How long had they been here? I tapped. How long? 3 days. More prisoners. Building is trap. My mind raced. If there were multiple prisoners, that meant Marcus and his associates had been planning this for more than just my investigation. This was bigger than corporate corruption. This was a systematic operation to eliminate threats to their organization. I tapped. How many? Unknown. At least 5. They take 1 each night. Take 1 each night. For what? I had a horrible suspicion I knew the answer. Escape plan. Working on it. Maintenance areas between walls. Need tools. I looked around the room again, this time with new purpose. I needed something I could use to remove the vent cover and access the maintenance areas Agent Reeves had mentioned. The bathroom yielded the first tool, a metal towel bar that could be unscrewed with enough patience. The desk had metal strips along its edges that might work as prying tools. It wasn't much, but it was a start. I was in the middle of working the towel bar loose when I heard footsteps in the corridor outside. I quickly climbed down from the vent and sat at the desk, trying to look like I was deep in contemplation. The door opened and Dr. Price stepped in, carrying his leather portfolio and a small black case. "I hope you don't mind the interruption, Ms. Chen, but I thought you might benefit from a consultation." I haven't made my decision yet. Oh, I'm not here about that. I'm here to help you make a more informed choice. He set his case on the desk and opened it, revealing an array of syringes and small vials filled with various colored liquids. These little helpers can make the decision process so much easier. I backed toward the wall. Stay away from me. Oh no. There's no need for dramatics. This won't hurt at all. In fact, you'll find it quite pleasant. These particular compounds simply help clarify one's thinking. Remove unnecessary anxieties and fears that might cloud judgment. You mean they'll drug me into compliance? Such harsh language. I prefer to think of them as cognitive enhancers. He selected a syringe and filled it from one of the vials. This particular cocktail will help you see the benefits of Mr. Blackwood's offer more clearly. He moved toward me and I grabbed the only thing within reach, a heavy ceramic mug from the kitchenette. I said stay back. Dr. Price paused, his expression more amused than concerned. Ms. Chen, please be reasonable. Fighting will only make this more difficult. That's when the lights went out. In the dark, the room plunged into complete darkness. Emergency lighting should have kicked in immediately, but it didn't. Something was wrong with the building systems. I heard Dr. Price curse in the darkness, followed by the sound of his case crashing to the floor, vials breaking and liquid spreading across the tiles. Security, he shouted. We have a problem. But no response came through his radio. Either the communication system was down or something else was happening. In the darkness, I heard a new sound, metal scraping against metal, coming from the air vent above. Someone was working to remove the cover from the other side. The beam of light suddenly cut through the darkness as Dr. Price activated a small flashlight. In its glow, I could see his face, no longer mild and professorial but twisted with anger and frustration. Clever girl, he said, advancing toward me. But you can't hide in the dark forever. The vent cover crashed to the floor with a metallic clang, and a voice called down from the opening above. Sarah, this way. Without hesitation, I leaped onto the desk and reached toward the opening. Strong hands grabbed my wrists and hauled me up into the narrow maintenance space between the building's floors. Dr. Price lunged after me, his flashlight beam sweeping wildly, but I was already beyond his reach. This is Agent Reeves, the man pulling me through the cramped space whispered. We need to move fast. The power outage won't last long. We crawled through the narrow space between floors, following a path that seemed to wind throughout the building's infrastructure. Agent Reeves moved with the confidence of someone who had been mapping these passages for days. How did you cut the power? I whispered. Wasn't me. Someone else is playing tonight. He paused at a junction where several passages met. This way. There are others we need to collect. We emerged into another maintenance area, this one large enough to stand in. In the dim light of Agent Reeves' flashlight, I could see that we weren't alone. Before they activate the security lockdown, we moved as quietly as possible through the maintenance passages, following Agent Reeves' lead. The building's architecture was more complex than it appeared from the outside, with multiple levels of service areas and hidden spaces that spoke of construction designed with security in mind. We were almost to the main stairwell when we heard voices echoing through the passages behind us. Find them. Marcus's voice carried clearly through the building's infrastructure. They can't have gone far. Agent Reeves held up his hand, signaling us to stop. Through a grate in the floor, we could see into one of the main corridors below. Marcus was there with Victor and Rebecca, along with several other people I hadn't seen before, security personnel by their appearance. The building is sealed, Marcus was saying. They're trapped in here with us. Search every room, every maintenance area, every possible hiding place. Rebecca twirled her knife absently. This is becoming tedious. Why don't we just flood the ventilation system with gas? That would flush them out quickly enough. Because we need them alive, Marcus replied. At least some of them. The FBI agent could be particularly useful for gathering information about ongoing investigations. My blood chilled. They were talking about torturing Agent Reeves for information. The stairwell is blocked, Agent Reeves whispered. They've posted guards at every exit. Then we go up, Dr. Mitchell said. To the roof. There might be another way down. The roof is probably the most heavily secured area, Professor Chong protested. Maybe, Agent Reeves said. But it's also where they're least likely to expect us to go. Sometimes the best hiding place is in plain sight. We changed direction, climbing through service ladders and maintenance shafts toward the building's upper levels. The passages grew narrower as we ascended, and several times we had to squeeze through spaces barely wide enough for an adult human. Finally, we reached what appeared to be the highest level of the maintenance system. Agent Reeves located an access panel that led to a small mechanical room just below the roof. From here, we should be able to access the roof, he said, examining a heavy metal door with multiple security locks. Those locks are electronic, Dr. Mitchell observed. Without power tools, we're not getting through them. That's when we heard the footsteps above us. Someone was on the roof. We froze, listening. The footsteps moved in a systematic pattern, as if someone was conducting a search. Then we heard a voice that made my heart sink. I know you're in there, Victoria called out. There's nowhere left to run. Chapter 5. The trap within a trap. We huddled in the mechanical room, barely breathing, as Victoria's footsteps continued above us. She was searching methodically, and it was only a matter of time before she found our hiding place. There has to be another way, Lisa whispered. Some other exit we haven't considered. Agent Reeves was studying a building schematic he'd somehow acquired during his days of captivity. There, he said, pointing to a section of the diagram. A service elevator that runs from the basement to the mechanical levels. It's used for moving heavy equipment. That's 3 floors down from here, Professor Chong said. And they're searching every level. Not every level. Agent Reeves looked up with the first expression of hope I'd seen on his face. They're searching the areas where they expect to find us. But there's one place they won't think to look. He pointed to a section of the building labeled Executive Suite on the schematic. Marcus's private quarters. They'll assume we'd never be bold enough to hide there. It was either brilliant or suicidal. Probably both. How do we get there without being seen? Dr. Mitchell asked. Agent Reeves traced a path on the schematic with his finger. The executive suite has its own dedicated service areas. We can access them through the main mechanical systems, but we'll have to go down 2 levels and then back up. The footsteps above us had stopped. In the silence, we could hear Victoria speaking into a radio. Roof level clear. Moving to check the mechanical areas below. We were out of time. Go, Agent Reeves whispered. Follow the route I showed you. I'll create a distraction. What kind of distraction? I asked, but he was already moving toward the door that led to the roof access. The kind that gives you a chance to escape. Don't waste it. Before any of us could protest, he had opened the door and stepped into the stairwell beyond. We heard his voice echoing up from below. Victoria, I surrender. Don't hurt the others. The sound of running footsteps followed, moving away from our location. He's buying us time, Dr. Mitchell said grimly. We need to use it. We made our way through the building's mechanical systems, following the route Agent Reeves had outlined. The passages were darker here, lit only by emergency lighting that cast eerie shadows on the walls as we moved. I couldn't shake the feeling that we were walking into another trap. Marcus had orchestrated everything else so perfectly. Why wouldn't he have anticipated this escape route as well? We reached the service entrance to the executive suite without encountering any guards. The door was secured with an electronic lock, but Dr. Mitchell surprised us all by producing a small device from his pocket. Magnetic card reader, he said in response to our questioning looks. I grabbed it from one of the maintenance rooms 3 days ago. All of them were armed. I have to admit I'm impressed, Marcus continued. Using Agent Reeves as a distraction while you made your way here was quite clever. Unfortunately, it was also exactly what I expected you to do. My heart sank. You knew we'd come here. Of course I knew. I've been watching your every move through the building's surveillance system. The power outage. I caused that to flush you out of your hiding places. Agent Reeves' escape plan. I've been aware of it since the first day. Everything that's happened tonight has been carefully orchestrated. Then why? Professor Chong demanded. Why let us think we were escaping? Marcus smiled, and it was the most chilling expression I'd ever seen. Because I needed to test you. All of you. You see, my organization doesn't just eliminate threats. We also recruit exceptional individuals. Tonight was your job interview. You're insane, Dr. Mitchell said. Am I? Look what you've accomplished in just a few hours. You organized, planned, executed a complex escape attempt, and showed remarkable resourcefulness under extreme pressure. These are exactly the qualities we look for in new recruits. Rebecca stepped forward, her knife glinting in the light. Of course, those who fail the interview don't get to leave. But those who pass, Marcus continued, become part of something extraordinary. Dr. Mitchell, your research skills could be invaluable for our biomedical projects. Professor Chong, your financial expertise could help us expand our operations globally. Lisa, a prosecutor with your skills could help us navigate legal challenges. And me? I asked, though I dreaded the answer. You, Ms. Chen, have already proven your worth tonight. You've shown leadership, quick thinking, and the ability to inspire others to action. You'd make an excellent field operative. The room fell silent except for the sound of our collective breathing. Outside the windows, the city sparkled with life, completely unaware of the nightmare unfolding 60 floors above. So here's your choice, Marcus said. The same choice I offered you earlier, but now with a fuller understanding of what we're offering. Join us willingly, and you'll have resources beyond your imagination. Refuse and... well, the interview ends permanently. Where's Agent Reeves? Lisa demanded. Safe for now. Cooperating with Dr. Price in answering some questions about FBI investigative procedures. His fate, like yours, depends on the decisions made in this room tonight. I looked at the others. Dr. Mitchell, Professor Chong, Lisa Rodriguez. All of them trapped in the same impossible situation. All of them facing the same choice between damnation and death. But something wasn't right. Marcus was too confident, too sure of himself. He'd planned everything perfectly, but perfect plans often had perfect flaws. I have a question, I said. Of course. If you've been watching us all night, if you knew about our escape plan, why didn't you stop us sooner? Why let us get this far? Marcus's smile faltered slightly. I told you. You told me this was a test. But that's not the whole truth, is it? I was gambling everything on a hunch, but the pieces were starting to fit together in a way that Marcus hadn't intended. You needed us to reach this room for a reason. Something you couldn't do yourself. Sarah, what are you thinking? Dr. Mitchell asked. I walked toward Marcus's desk, ignoring the weapons trained on me. You've been running this operation for years, eliminating threats, recruiting assets. But something's gone wrong recently, hasn't it? Something that threatens the entire organization. Marcus's expression had gone completely cold. You're speculating. Am I? You said this building was sealed, that we were trapped. But if that's true, how did you expect us to escape after joining your organization? How did you plan to get us out? I reached the desk and saw what I was looking for. A secure terminal that was still logged in, displaying what looked like financial records. Because you can't leave either, can you, Marcus? You're just as trapped in this building as we are. Chapter 6. The truth revealed. The silence in the room was deafening. Marcus's confident demeanor had completely evaporated, replaced by something I'd never expected to see on his face. Fear. You're trapped too, I continued, my fingers hovering over the keyboard of his terminal. That's why you needed us to reach this room. You need our help. Rebecca raised her knife. Enough games. Let's just end this. Wait, Marcus said, his voice barely above a whisper. She's right. The admission hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Victor and the other guards looked confused, unsure how to react to this development.